The man, nobody noticed. The rain had stopped, but the ground still carried the silence of a storm. Inside the studio building, the cleaning cart squeaked as it rolled across the hallway. No one paid attention to it. They never did. To them, it was just background noise. But the man pushing it, an old cleaner with tired eyes and a bent back, moved with care, wiping the polished floor with gentle hands. His name was Rafiq. And today, everything was about to change. The hallway doors suddenly burst open. Loud laughter echoed through the corridor. A group of people entered, all wearing sharp suits and stylish smiles. Cameras followed behind them like obedient pets. In the center of it all walked Tom Cruise, icon of charm, full of energy, and always performing. Even when the cameras weren't officially rolling, Rafiq stepped aside politely, moving his cart to the wall. His body language was quiet, humble, invisible. But something caught Tom's attention. The old man had dropped his rag, and instead of bending to pick it up, he slowly lowered himself, knees creaking like rusted metal. Tom paused, then chuckled. "That's why we have robots now," he said loudly, just enough for everyone to hear. The group burst into polite laughter. One assistant even clapped. The cameras caught it all, unplanned, unscripted, but perfect for behind the scenes. Rafiq didn't reply. He gave a faint smile, picked up the rag and went back to cleaning. He had cleaned toilets and polished mirrors for 30 years. He had seen more broken dreams than shining stars. Nothing surprised him anymore. Nothing hurt either, or so he told himself. But someone else was watching, not from the cameras. Not from the spotlight. Keanu Reeves had arrived earlier than scheduled. He'd chosen to walk instead of arriving in a car. He stood near the edge of the hallway, wearing a plain black hoodie and holding a cup of tea. Nobody noticed him. He liked it that way. And what he had just seen, what he had just heard, didn't sit right with him. His eyes weren't on Tom. They were on Rafiq. As Tom walked away, full of energy and jokes, Keanu quietly placed his tea on the bench nearby. Then, without a word, he walked over to Rafiq and took the second rag from the cart. Rafiq looked up, confused. "You missed a spot," Keanu said softly, pointing at a small corner near the baseboard. Rafiq blinked. "Sir, you don't have two?" But Keanu had already knelt down beside him, pressing the rag into the floor. The hallway fell silent. Only the soft sound of cleaning echoed now. Two men, one old and forgotten, one famous and quietly kind, side by side, polishing the same floor. And then came the whispers. Someone peeked from around the corner. A makeup artist. Then a sound technician. Someone gasped. "Is that Keanu?" The news spread like electricity. People came silently, unsure whether to laugh or speak. But Keanu didn't look up. Neither did Rafiq. "This floor matters," Keanu whispered. "If someone slips here, they might fall. They could get hurt. The work you do protects people." Rafiq felt something rise in his chest. For the first time in years, someone had spoken to him. Not at him, not around him, but to him. And with respect. The hallway began to shift. Eyes softened. A few assistants lowered their heads. Even Tom, returning from a laugh-filled interview room, paused and saw the crowd watching the floor. Not him. He stepped closer, confused. "What's going on?" someone whispered. "Keanu's cleaning." Tom laughed again, but this time it was unsure. "You're joking." But Keanu looked up, his voice calm. "No joke. Just helping someone who deserves it." There was no anger in his tone, no show, just truth. And for the first time that day, the room fell quiet. Not because of a spotlight, not because of fame, but because of a moment so simple, yet so rare. Later, when the cameras were checked, the footage had missed it. No one had recorded the exact moment. It hadn't gone viral, yet. But in the hearts of those who witnessed it, Something had changed. Something small, but real. Back in the janitor's room, Rafiq placed the clean rag on the shelf. His hands trembled slightly, not from exhaustion, but from something else. Hope. There was a knock on the door. He turned. Keanu stood there with 2 paper cups of tea. "Thought you might want a break," he said. Rafiq nodded, speechless. They sat on the bench outside. No words for a while. Just the steam of tea rising between them. "Why did you do that?" Rafiq finally asked. Keanu looked at him. His eyes were calm but deep. "Because someone once cleaned beside me," he said. "Back when no one knew my name, and he told me, 'Kindness is never wasted.' I never forgot that." Rafiq looked at the steam, then the floor, then back at the hallway. "People only look at the stars," he said. "Never the floor that holds them up." Keanu smiled softly. "Then let's remind them." And with that quiet promise, something more powerful than fame had begun to grow, a story that would ripple far beyond that studio hallway. Whispers in the studio the next morning. Everything looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. Rafiq entered the studio quietly, as he had done for decades. The same cart, the same mop, the same badge with faded letters. Yet as he moved down the hallway, something had changed. People were looking at him, not with the usual emptiness or irritation, not with the eyes that said, "Get out of the way," but with hesitation, and maybe even respect. A young intern from wardrobe stepped aside as Rafiq passed. She smiled. That had never happened before. A sound engineer offered him a fresh bottle of water and said, "Good morning, sir." Rafiq nearly dropped his mop. He wasn't sure what was going on until he heard 2 assistants whispering near the craft table. "Did you see him yesterday?" "Yeah, with Keanu. They cleaned together, like equals." What was Tom thinking, mocking him like that? "I used to admire Tom more than anyone, but now, Keanu's different. He means it." Rafiq pretended not to hear. He kept walking, but deep inside, a warmth he hadn't felt in years flickered like a forgotten candle. Meanwhile, inside the main lounge, Keanu sat in a corner chair with a notebook. He had been offered a luxury trailer and a private suite, but he refused. He said he liked the view from the hallway. Tom Cruise entered, sunglasses on, charm turned up to full. People greeted him, but not with the same excitement as before. Something in their voices was off, polite but unsure. "Morning, folks," Tom grinned, clapping his hands. "Another beautiful day to be awesome." No one laughed. He looked around. "What's with the faces?" No one replied. Keanu raised his eyes from the notebook, then gently closed it. "Tom," he said softly, "can I talk to you for a second?" Tom hesitated, then nodded. "Sure." They walked to a quiet corner near the props room. Tom leaned against the wall. "What's up?" Keanu didn't waste time. "Yesterday, the joke about the cleaner. It didn't sit right." Tom scoffed. "Come on, man. It was a joke. The guy didn't even react. He's used to being ignored." "That doesn't make it okay." Tom raised his hands. "Look, if I offended him, I'll apologize. Happy?" Keanu looked at him, not with anger, but with disappointment. "It's not about being happy. It's about being aware." Tom's smile faded. Keanu continued. "We're given attention, cameras, fame, applause. But if we forget the people who clean the spaces where we shine, we lose something important." "Like what?" "Like our soul." The words hit harder than Tom expected. For a moment, he said nothing. "You think I'm heartless?" he asked, his voice quieter. "I think you're human," Keanu replied. "And sometimes we forget." "I do too." Tom looked away. His jaw moved slightly. No smart remarks this time, just silence. Back in the hallway, Rafiq continued working. He didn't expect anything more. He never had. But as he moved toward Studio 4, a young actress he didn't recognize approached him. "You're the man who cleaned with Keanu, right?" Rafiq froze. I guess. My father used to clean buildings, she said. He worked 3 jobs to help me study acting. People looked through him like glass. I wish he was alive to see this. Rafiq didn't know what to say. She handed him a small notebook. He used to write poems. Maybe you'd like one. Rafiq nodded slowly and took the notebook with shaky hands. Later that evening, after everyone had gone, Rafiq sat alone on the bench near the janitor's room. The hallway lights were dim. Soft music came from somewhere distant. He opened the notebook. The poem on the first page read, "They walk on floors I shine with care, and yet they never see me there. But if one day a kind soul kneels, he'll know how humble love can heal." Tears touched his cheeks before he could stop them. Then he heard soft footsteps. Keanu appeared, carrying 2 cups of tea. "I owe you one," he said with a smile. "For what?" "For reminding me what matters." They sat together again, in silence. 2 men from 2 worlds, linked by something stronger than fame, kindness. Meanwhile, word began to spread outside the studio. Someone from makeup had posted an anonymous thread on a fan forum. Keanu cleaned the floor with the janitor while Tom made fun of him. It wasn't just gossip. It was a seed, and seeds have a way of growing, especially when watered by truth. By the end of the week, whispers had turned into full conversations. Crew members began to clean up after themselves. Actors started greeting the custodial staff by name. Even the director made a speech about respecting every role on set. As for Tom, something inside him had started to shift, slowly, quietly. But not without resistance, because when a spotlight moves away, ego fights to pull it back. And that's when trouble began to stir, off the stage, behind the curtains. Something darker was coming, but Rafiq didn't know it yet. He only knew that for the first time in a long while, he mattered, and someone powerful, had seen him. The storm behind the curtain. The studio buzzed louder than usual that morning. A rumor had spread through the back rooms, whispered between coffee cups and camera lenses. Someone had leaked the story to a small online blog. It was a gentle piece, written by an anonymous crew member. It spoke not of gossip or scandal, but of a quiet moment between a janitor and a star. No names were mentioned, but the message was clear. Fame is nothing without humility. Overnight, the blog post had been shared over 5,000 times. It made its way into actor group chats, staff message boards, and even a few early morning news snippets. And though Tom Cruise's name wasn't in the story, many who had been there remembered. And Tom did too. He stood in his dressing room, holding his phone, scrolling through comments. Most were positive. Most praised the kindness of the star, who knelt to clean. But some questioned others in the room. One comment in particular stayed in his mind. Some laughed while an old man struggled. One man kneeled beside him. That's the difference. Tom set his phone down. His reflection stared back at him. Perfect hair, glowing skin, but something behind the eyes didn't shine. He slammed the mirror shut. Down the hallway, Rafiq was cleaning the rehearsal room, humming softly. He'd started to hum again after years. The warmth from the last few days had melted something inside him, something frozen for too long. As he worked, he noticed a folded piece of paper taped to the wall near the mirror. He opened it. In neat handwriting, it said, "You are the reason. We come back to work each day with dignity. Thank you for being here." No signature, just those words. His hands trembled again, not from age, but from something much stronger. Worth. Suddenly, the door burst open. It was Tom Cruise. He didn't speak at first. He just stood there, watching Rafiq. "You're the cleaner," Tom finally said. Rafiq looked up, unsure how to answer. "Yes, I've been here a long time." Tom stepped closer. "I didn't mean to, that day. It was a joke. I didn't think." Rafiq gave a small smile. It's all right, sir. I've heard worse. Tom frowned. But you shouldn't have to. Rafiq said nothing. Tom hesitated, then blurted out, Why didn't you say something? Why didn't you push back? Rafiq gently put the mop aside. When people see through you for so many years, you forget how to be seen. The room went quiet, and in that silence, Tom felt something shift inside him again. Guilt, maybe. Regret. Or perhaps the first sting of self-awareness. I want to make it right, Tom said, suddenly. I want to do something. But before Rafiq could reply, a loud voice from the hallway interrupted them. Rafiq! It was the production manager, holding a clipboard and looking irritated. Come with me, he said. Now. Rafiq wiped his hands and followed. Keanu was already standing in the hallway, arms crossed. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. What's going on? He asked. The manager waved the clipboard. I just received a complaint. Someone's accusing Rafiq of leaking details about private studio interactions. The blog post, the story, it came from inside. And this is the only new person anyone's talked about lately. Rafiq froze. I didn't write anything. I don't even know how to use blogs. Keanu stepped in. This is nonsense. You think he leaked it? Look, we just have to investigate. Higher-ups want answers. Tom stepped forward from behind. If anyone should be questioned, it's me. I was part of that moment. The manager raised an eyebrow. You, sir? Yes, Tom said firmly. And so was Keanu. And dozens of others. Rafiq's being used as a scapegoat. The manager lowered his clipboard. Well, there'll still be a temporary review. We need to show we're doing something. Keanu's voice turned cold. You mean pretend you care while punishing someone harmless? But Rafiq held up his hand. It's all right. Let them check. I've got nothing to hide. And that's when Keanu made a quiet vow. If they push him out, he said to Tom later, I walk too. Tom looked surprised. You'd really do that? Keanu nodded. It's not about him. It's about what we allow. For the rest of the day, tension hung in the air. Crew members passed around whispers like notes in class. People began choosing sides. Some backed the production team. Others supported Keanu. But no one questioned Rafiq's honesty. They had watched him clean with honor. They had felt his presence change the atmosphere. That evening, as Rafiq cleaned the large, empty stage, Keanu entered again. This time, he wasn't alone. A dozen staff members followed him. Makeup artists, sound crew, interns, even a few junior actors. They all brought rags, mops, buckets. Keanu handed Rafiq a cloth. You taught us something. Rafiq looked around. What's this? The floor holds us all, Keanu said. So let's clean it together. And as the stage lights dimmed, people knelt, not in worship, not in fear, but in unity. Tom watched from the side, unsure whether to join. His fingers twitched. His pride whispered, You don't need this. But something louder spoke inside. So he stepped forward. And for the first time in his career, Tom Cruise cleaned the floor, beside Rafiq, beside Keanu, not as stars, but as people. The silence before the blow, the next morning, the studio felt heavy. The air wasn't tense, it was quiet, like a sky just before the storm. Word of the stage cleaning had reached the upper management. Not through whispers this time, but through security footage and official complaints. Someone had filmed the moment when Tom Cruise knelt beside a janitor. Someone else had recorded Keanu's speech, but it wasn't being praised by everyone. Some executives were furious. This isn't a charity house, one of them said behind a closed door. It's a film set. Order, image, control. That's what we're here to protect. And they decided something drastic. A memo was sent out across departments, carefully worded to avoid blame, but filled with sharp lines. Unapproved disruptions to scheduled production, including unsanctioned activities during work hours, will not be tolerated. But behind the polished words was a decision. Rafiq would be let go, not immediately, not loudly, but quietly, at the end of the week. The reason? Performance review failure. They thought no one would notice. They were wrong. It was a Thursday when Rafiq received the envelope. He opened it slowly, standing beside his cleaning cart like always. His hands didn't shake this time, not because he wasn't hurt, but because he had been broken too many times before. The words on the letter didn't surprise him. What surprised him was how much this one hurt, because for once he had felt seen. He folded the letter and placed it in his pocket just as Keanu walked into the hallway. Keanu saw Rafiq's face. He didn't need to ask. "They're letting me go," Rafiq said softly. "They said it's not personal." Keanu's eyes narrowed. "It's always personal when truth makes people uncomfortable." That evening, Keanu called a meeting. Not in a boardroom, not in a fancy lounge, but in the hallway outside the janitor's closet. Over 40 people showed up: crew, assistants, extras, even the caterer. They brought folding chairs, thermos flasks, sandwiches, and they listened. Keanu stood beside Rafiq. "Some people say this is a business," Keanu began, his voice calm but strong. "They say we're paid to perform and nothing more. But if we treat the humans around us like props, then we become the real machines," someone whispered. "Yes," he continued. "When someone like Rafiq shows us what quiet dignity looks like, we should lift him up, not push him out." Someone clapped. Then another. Then more. But not everyone was clapping. In the shadows near the hallway end, a producer stood watching, arms folded, cold eyes. The next morning, the studio lights stayed off longer than usual. The director was late. Tom was silent. And Keanu had disappeared. People asked around. "He's not in his trailer. He didn't come to wardrobe." No, one knew, until a post appeared online. A single photo. Keanu Reeves standing outside the studio gate holding a sign made from cardboard. The message: "Bring back the man who cleaned with grace, or film without me." Within hours, it went viral. Comments poured in. "He's the real deal." Finally, a star who stands for something. "Who is Rafiq? I want to know his story." News outlets picked it up. Keanu Reeves halts production in silent protest. Janitor's quiet moment leads to Hollywood's loud awakening. Rafiq was still inside the building when he saw the photo. Someone showed it to him on their phone. He looked at it for a long time without blinking. "Why would he do this?" he whispered. An intern beside him said, "Because you matter." Meanwhile, Tom Cruise sat in the conference room with 3 producers. Tension filled the space. "You started this," one producer snapped. "No," Tom replied quietly. "I laughed at a man." Keanu stood with him. "That's the real beginning." Another producer leaned forward. "If he doesn't return, we lose millions. Do something." Tom stood slowly. "Maybe we've already lost more than money." He walked out. 15 minutes later, a new photo appeared online. Tom Cruise, standing beside Keanu, holding a second sign. "I was wrong. Bring him back." That one shook the internet. Hours later, the studio caved. The memo was revoked. A public apology was drafted, and Rafiq was called to the office. They offered his job back. They added a line about appreciation for years of service. But Rafiq asked one question: "Why now?" They didn't answer. He nodded and said, "I'll think about it." He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He just walked out and sat on the same bench near the hallway. Keanu met him there. "You all right?" Keanu asked. Rafiq nodded. "I'm still invisible to some, but no longer to myself." Keanu smiled. "That's the beginning of something bigger," he said. The voice they never expected. 2 days passed. The world outside the studio had changed, but inside, it was holding its breath. Production was frozen. Executives stayed quiet. Actors whispered in corners. The press waited by the gates. The janitor they had once ignored was now the center of attention. But Rafiq didn't rush his decision. He still showed up, not to clean, but to sit. Every morning, he arrived early, just before sunrise. He sat quietly on the same bench outside the hallway. The same bench where Keanu had once offered him tea. The same bench where he had read the poem about being unseen. Now people came to him. Crew members stopped to ask how he was. Interns brought him tea without asking. A senior lighting technician even asked for his advice. What kind of mop is best for soundstage floors? Rafiq smiled gently. One that listens to the dirt before trying to move it. The answer didn't make sense to most. But Keanu, standing nearby, smiled. He understood. Then came a knock on his door that evening. It wasn't Keanu. It wasn't. It was a woman named Maya. She wore a plain gray sweater, held a tablet, and looked a little nervous. "I work for a documentary team," she said. "We read about what happened here. Would you allow us to tell your story?" Rafiq looked at her carefully. "Why?" "Because stories like yours matter, and too many people never get heard." Rafiq looked down at his hands worn from years of invisible work, hands that had wiped, scrubbed, and lifted silently. "All right," he said quietly. "But no lights, no makeup, just truth." She nodded. Within hours, a small team came in. No fanfare, no cameras on sticks, just handheld mics and quiet respect. They asked him questions. When did he start cleaning? Why did he stay for so long? Had he ever dreamed of something else? And Rafiq spoke. Not loudly, not proudly, just simply. He spoke of his home country, where he had been a school teacher. He spoke of losing his wife during the first year of immigration. He spoke of how cleaning paid for his daughter's medicine. And he spoke of how, over the years, people stopped seeing him, even though he never stopped seeing them. "I learned everyone's name," he said. "But no one learned mine," Maya asked gently. "And how did you feel when Keanu joined you that day?" Rafiq paused. Then he smiled, like the world had turned its head, and finally looked me in the eyes. The interview was raw, uncut, unpolished. They uploaded it that night, and by morning, it was everywhere, titled simply, "The Janitor Who Changed Hollywood's Mirror." Millions watched it, actors shared it, directors reposted it, and most of all, ordinary workers from around the world. Cry.comments flooded in. "He speaks for all of us. My father worked 3 jobs, and no one thanked him. This story healed something in me. Keanu is a legend, but this man, he's our quiet hero." As the video spread, Rafiq's story reached news stations, late-night talk shows, and schools. Children wrote him letters. An old friend from back home recognized him and sent a photo from their teaching days. Keanu visited him again on the bench. "You ready to go back in?" he asked. Rafiq looked toward the hallway. "No," he said softly. Keanu blinked. "No?" Rafiq nodded. "Not as a cleaner." Keanu smiled slowly. "Then what?" "As someone who helps people see what they've been walking over." The next day, the studio received a formal proposal. Rafiq offered to return, but not to mop floors. He wanted to create a respect and dignity program for all support staff. Cleaners, drivers, security, cafeteria teams. Every invisible person who made the spotlight possible. The studio was hesitant. Until Tom Cruise walked into the meeting room, he placed his phone on the table. The screen showed Rafiq's interview, paused at the line. "I learned everyone's name. No one learned mine." "You want us to protect our image?" Tom said. "This is our best image." The executives approved the program in 1 hour. By end of month, Rafiq had an office. Not big, not flashy, but it had a desk, a plant, and a plaque with his name. He smiled when he saw it, not because it was fancy, but because for the first time, in 30 years, someone had printed his name without a spelling mistake. Down the hallway, a new janitor had joined the team. Young, shy, curious. He approached Rafiq one day. "Sir," he asked, "what should I remember about this job?" Rafiq placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. Clean with pride. Not because they're watching, but because one day they might finally see. And far away, Keanu watched the hallway from a distance. No cameras, no fans, just a quiet man witnessing a seed grow. The final sweep, the hallway was different now. People didn't rush through it anymore. They walked slower. They greeted the ones they used to ignore. The cleaning cart no longer squeaked in the silence. It rolled through a path filled with nods, smiles, and thank yous. Rafiq had been given a new title, Head of Dignity and Workplace Harmony, but titles didn't change him. He still wore the same shoes, still arrived early, still carried a small notebook in his pocket, one filled with names of every staff member, from the youngest intern to the oldest driver. He believed knowing someone's name was the first step to seeing their soul. The program he created, once dismissed as symbolic, had now grown into something bigger. Other studios began asking questions. Other sets began creating their own dignity programs, and Rafiq had become something he never expected. An example, but he never called himself a leader. "I'm just someone who used to clean the corners," he often said. "Now I help others see the corners." Yet even as things changed, something still lingered unfinished. Tom Cruise had changed too, but quietly. He had joined the early morning crew twice a week, without cameras. He no longer walked with his usual fanfare. He started listening more, talking less. But there was still one thing left unsaid. One morning, as the sky turned a soft gray, Tom found Rafiq standing alone on the rooftop terrace, overlooking the city. "Rafiq," he said, walking over. "Do you have a minute?" Rafiq smiled. "For you, always." Tom hesitated. His eyes dropped to the ground. The rooftop felt heavy with emotion. "I wanted to say something," Tom began. "Something real, no performance, no polish." Rafiq nodded, waiting. "That day," Tom continued, "when I laughed at you, I didn't see you. I saw a moment to be funny, to keep the room light. But in doing that, I darkened something real." Rafiq didn't interrupt. "I was raised to believe we earn respect through status," Tom said. "But you taught me that respect is a choice, and I didn't choose it." His voice trembled now. "I'm sorry, Rafiq. Not for what the world saw, but for what I failed to see." Rafiq placed a hand on Tom's shoulder. "Thank you," he said simply. "Not just for the apology, but for becoming someone who means it." They stood in silence, looking over the city. Two men, once worlds apart, now closer than anyone might imagine. And just then, Rafiq pulled out his notebook. "I want you to read something," he said. He opened to the last page. Written in his own handwriting was a short piece, a memory. "I once stood in a hallway where people walked past without seeing me. I cleaned footprints, not knowing mine mattered, but one day someone knelt beside me, not to pity me, but to join me. That's the moment the dust became visible. And so did I." Tom read the words slowly. When he finished, his eyes were red. "You wrote this?" Rafiq nodded. "After the first day, Keanu joined me." Tom swallowed hard. "Can I share it?" "You already have," Rafiq said with a smile, "just by changing." That evening, something unexpected happened. A large stage was set in the center of the studio. Not for a film shoot, not for a gala. It was for a ceremony. Keanu stood behind the curtain, adjusting a mic. He wore a plain shirt, jeans, and that same quiet calm in his eyes. As the lights dimmed, the studio heads came on stage, along with crew, workers, and families. The night wasn't about box office numbers or film premieres. It was to honor the people who made the foundation. Rafiq was called up. As he stood on stage, unsure of what to say, a voice called from the back. It was Tom Cruise. "Read your words," he said. "The ones from the notebook." Rafiq paused, then opened the worn pages. He read slowly, his voice steady, and when he finished, the room erupted, not with noise, but with a quiet, respectful standing ovation. No shouting, no cheering, just hands clapping in gentle rhythm, like a heartbeat. After the ceremony, Keanu found Rafiq alone again. "You've changed things," Keanu said. Rafiq shook his head. "No, kindness did." Keanu chuckled. "Same thing, really." Rafiq looked at him with soft eyes. "I never asked," he said. "Why did you help me that day?" Keanu looked up at the stars, then back at him. "Because years ago someone helped me when I was nothing. They told me, never pass by someone doing quiet work. That's where the loudest lessons live." Rafiq smiled. "Then let's never stop learning." Years later, long after films had come and gone, long after actors moved on to new roles, one story remained, a story about an old cleaner, a hallway, a laugh, a kneel, a choice, and a friendship that reminded the world, the ones we overlook are often the ones holding us up.